Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Landsman. I'm our board chair, and tonight is our general board meeting for the month of July. So welcome, everyone. First item on the agenda is to toggle the slides forward to the second slide. Here we go. The Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll stand and do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. We'll do the roll call.
Mr. Landsman, we're trying to fix the audio for online, so we might just need a second. Or you want me to do roll call? They cannot hear us.
They cannot hear us? Okay.
I can hear online. Okay, so now they can. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mr. Furman?
Present.
Pastor Jones? Mr. Cowan? Mr. Torres? Dr. Hans? Here. Ms. Newman?
Present.
Ms. Root? Here. Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Here.
Dr. Giles?
Present.
Mr. Landsman?
Here.
Mr. Furman, did I call you?
You did?
Okay, Mr. Furman.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Next, I'll look to the board members to offer a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. So we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion?
Have a discussion.
Do we have a contract report on that? You know, we need to make a.
Sorry.
Yes.
Our gentleman that's supposed to be for Stories That Inspire is not here yet. He's coming from another location, so I don't know if you want to move him down the agenda.
So there's a couple things I think, before we take a vote on the agenda, but we need to float that. We need to float that agenda item so when they arrive. As well, we need to do an update on the CEO's contract. Okay. Is that acceptable to the agenda by the motion maker and the forwarding person? Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion or other things that we need to do? The motion is to approve the agenda as amended, to float the Stories That Inspire and to add an additional item on the other business for the CEO's contract. Okay.
Under other business?
Under other business, yes.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, I guess all those in favor of approving the motion to modify the agenda as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the public comment. Okay, I see at least one person in the building that wishes to make public comment. We now have a formal policy along with our regular comment statement. We've reduced the number of minutes to comment on down to 3 minutes and we ask that it be related to the business of the business, which is OCHN, the department, and other things that are related to all of this. Is there anyone remote that wishes to make comment? Okay, let's go with the remote person or persons? How many do we have there?
One,
Just one? All right. And then we'll have in the building.
Clarence Johnson.
Okay. Welcome, Clarence Johnson. You have the floor for 3 minutes. Clarence, you may be on mute. Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson? Are they still active in the meeting? Okay. If they are, or if someone knows who this person is, please let them know that we're going to move on to the folks that are local. Then we'll come back to him, and if we need to, we will have a second opportunity to make public comment later on in tonight's meeting. Okay. Please come up and identify who you are for the board and for the public, please, sir.
Hi, Fred Cummins, President of Alliance for Mentally Ill of Oakland County. I just want to talk a little more about some insight from the Solidarity meeting, I guess a couple of weeks ago now. There were a lot of people there who were representing the community, had an interest in basically to some extent helping what needs to be done by OCHN, probably some other things too, dealing with homelessness and so on. But in particular concerned about effectively reaching out and helping people who have a mental health problem. And it occurred to me that I want to encourage them to help, but I don't want them to try to do what OCHN should be doing. I don't want a duplication or a confusion of what their responsibilities are. So I handed out this to all of you, about a book called Healing by Thomas Insel, who's a former director of the National Institute of Mental Health. And this is an excerpt from that book. It talks about what he called the friendship bench, was dealing with underprivileged communities. I think it was actually in some African nation where people had lots of problems but didn't have any services, were looking for something they could help. And he recognized that just getting to people who were respected in the community, basically elders in the community, and giving them some understanding of how they could help people at a fairly fundamental level. He called it the friendship bench, and these people would greet people who were having problems. He also called these elders grannies, helpful grannies. But the point was that there was a lot of benefit in helping people who were just having some difficulties of life, some which may have bordered on mental illness or early mental illness, but didn't require anything intensive, to help them kind of get things under control, give them some insight as older people and so on. So, and the article I excerpt here will expand on that, there's possibilities to do something similar, and it talks about something that's been done in the U.S., and involving peer support and other people to help them, let them help people who otherwise may not get any help because, first of all, they may not qualify for health care, but also because they don't necessarily see themselves as having mental health problems. They certainly see themselves as problems. So I encourage you to look at this book. I talked about this book before. It has very heavy emphasis on the need for therapy in complement, to complement medications. Medications are something that should be enabling to therapy, but they're not a substitute for therapy. And a lot of people who are being served by OCHN are getting medications only, and a lot of people who could be served by OCHN could use some therapy. So I encourage you to take a look at this section of the book, but also take a look at the book in general, and think about how it will help engage other people in the community who want to help and give them a way to help. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment and for bringing up this book, Healing, from Thomas Insel. Dr. Tom, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to make public comment? If not, we'll have a second opportunity later on in this meeting. Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda would be Stories That Inspire. We're going to hold off, and when this person arrives, we will then do my favorite part of the meeting, which is the Stories That Inspire. All right, next on the agenda is the board chairman's report. So I will give that now. Our executive committee did not meet at the usual fourth Thursday of the month meeting because it was preempted by the CMHA Metro Region meeting on June 22nd. At this point in the calendar in the fiscal year, the committee will, at our upcoming 27th meeting, which is next week, be involved with the board's upcoming month's agendas, perhaps the 2024 fiscal budget, progress towards revisions and renewal of our CEO's contract, and any other business that might be brought between to this committee or others as well. With the emergency order now expired, recertification, Medicaid participants, and changes passed down from the recent federal government legislative actions to the state, and then now even the state legislative actions that they need to do recently to get to a balanced budget, there have been potentially a number of impacts to our OCHN budget fiscally and operationally. So I'm going to ask our board members here to get ready, prepare, roll up your sleeves, and actively participate and ask questions when we start dealing with these topics related to the budget. Our Executive Director Performance Review Committee met on, it seemed like it was recent, but it was June 26th. They reviewed the board's survey evaluation results. We went into closed session to discuss and review the review with our CEO. Then we moved back into open session to draft, discuss, and approve a motion to the entire board. That motion will be presented and acted upon by our entire board this evening. And then the last of the items I have is that the CMHA, so that's the Community Mental Health Association's conference. They had their spring conference in early June up in Traverse City. I only bring it up now because the fall conference will also be up in Traverse City in late October. It will be upon us sooner than you think. The days are already getting shorter. I know it's still summer, but that's how it is. I hope that more of our board members will attend. It's a chance to learn, to build relationships with our board members and our staff, and with other board members, other staff, and presenters, as well the occasional mover and shaker that attends. So please think about it. Clear off your calendar for, I believe it's the last weekend in October, and we'll see you up there. Is there, and I know that Sheila will be letting you guys know when the formal dates are. So that's what I have for my report tonight. If we move on to the next agenda item, that's Policy Management Committee. Do we have a report from that meeting? I think Yvette, you weren't chairing, but you covered that committee's. You were chairing for Malkaya for that meeting, correct?
Yes.
All right.
The only thing that was discussed at the COW was the the wage increase that was part of the pilot for direct staff care workers. And a lot of discussion ensued about what would happen at the end of that, whether or not those funds would be in place where people could maintain that. And we also discussed whether or not there was a control group to see whether or not the additional funding did make a difference. And what Ms. Trumbull presented, it made a difference in some areas, and other areas it didn't, and they were going to continue to study that. And one of the suggestions was to look at some agencies that had some of the organizations in the pilot versus not having some in the pilot, and have them do a comparative study, and she will report back on those things. That concludes the discussion on that subject matter.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda would be the Finance Committee update.
Thank you. The Finance Committee meeting at our COW last week considered 3 contracts which were recommended for approval by the full board, and that's before you this evening. We also have the acceptance of the audit, and we had the final letters from BDO that accompanied the audit, and it is customary practice for the board to accept the audit as part of the books and records of the organization. So we'll do that later on this evening. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda would be the contracts. So the first contract up is the Allegro printing contract. And your committee reported out support for the Allegro?
Gotta find. Sorry.
That's okay.
I got her. Oh, okay. Good. I got it now. Okay. This is our printing and mailing contract. This is a budgeted item for $104,500, and it'll be over a 2-year period. This was presented last month and unanimously recommended for approval. So if we could have a motion regarding the Allegra contract.
So moved. Support.
Okay, there's a motion. There's been support. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify, so this was this was an extension, correct? We didn't bid out for this, right?
That's correct.
2-year extension.
Yep.
So
Right.
we're not required to bid for it.
Correct, and it's at the same cost as
Right.
it was before, which is pretty amazing given costs have risen dramatically.
Right.
Okay. I guess we're ready for any other discussion on this motion to approve the Allegro printing contract. If not, we'll do a roll call.
Just a reminder, if board members could speak in the mic, it's hard for the people online to be able to hear. Okay. It would help if we got you mics that work, right? Okay. Okay. Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hahn? Ms. Newman? Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles? Yes. Mr. Lansman?
Yes.
I'm also going to note for the record that Pastor Jones and Ms. May is also in attendance.
Thank you.
I didn't vote. Miss Sheila.
Christina Root did not vote.
Yes. Yes.
All right, our next item is the Cumulus Media contract. This is for radio advertising for an 8-week period using SUD grant funding and violence reduction funding grants. And this will be materials creating, or rather media creating awareness of ocean services and among a larger listener base. We went over this last meeting last week, and we have 3 different radio stations, so it's going to be spread out and not just on one station. And I think you see some of the dollar amounts that are involved. I think it's $106,750 proposed contract amount. And this was moved and adopted for recommendation unanimously at our last meeting with our COW meeting. So I'd ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Support.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this contract? New contract extension? I can't tell.
It's an extension.
Extension?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All right. Sheila, when you are ready, we'll do a roll call.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff? Ms. May? Ms. Root? Ms. Newman? Dr. Hans?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I think given our technology, we're hoping that one day there will be a bid approval request for replacement of the microphone.
Yeah.
What is the third item on the agenda, then?
The third item is with Smarter HEPA LLC, and this is for purchasing air purifiers and filters for our vendors and their locations. And this money is being provided with some of the mental health block grant for COVID mitigation money that we received, and that will pay the approximate $160,000, just under that. So this is a one-time expenditure at this point. And as a result, we did have, again, a full recommendation, unanimous vote of our committee at the last meeting for approval and adoption by the board. So I'd ask for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Support.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have support for a contract based on grant money for $160,000 for the 400 air purifiers for 49 providers and 230 locations. Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Roll call when you are ready.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
The last item from the Finance Committee is the acceptance of the fiscal year 22 financial audit that has been now completed by BDO. We had a presentation last month on the audit to go over a number of issues, the typical standard type issues. We've received their letter from BDO, which is basically from what I understand, a clean, audit, letter. And so I would ask for, as is customary practice, a motion to, accept and file the fiscal year 22 audit.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Support? Second. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 fiscal audit? Yes. John Paul.
So I just, I had a,
Well, let's get you a mic.
let's try that. Thank you. All right, all right, there we go. Yeah, I know how difficult it is when you're on the side to hear, because if you're not talking specifically into the mic, you can't understand what's happening. So I guess I was perplexed by the audit, because I know we got numbers that we were given that we had overspent for the fiscal year 2021, 2022 of, and the last number that I had was the $10.9 million. So when they were going through the audit, they were explaining these are the measures that are in place to assure that the dollars are spent correctly, but we still have the cost settlements that we dealt with. We talked about the fact, when I did ask a question about were we monitoring, you know, how did we end up in the overspend of the $10 million? And, you know, it was brought to light that we weren't monitoring the providers correctly. We were doing budget amendments, but not in the proper way. So to me, that made sense, because if we're not thoroughly keeping track of the monies that are being spent, then it's easy to lose track of what our budget numbers are. But then we're getting the audit report, when I go to page 8, and it says essentially that material weaknesses identified, no. Significant deficiencies identified, no. Non-compliance material to financial statements, no. So it's saying we have a clean audit. So when I went back and thought about it, so I'm thinking, is it that the audit is telling us that we have the proper procedures in place, right, in theory, but what I took from that was we didn't execute those procedures, and that was why we had the 10.9 roughly was the number that I had from last time, overspend within our budget during that fiscal year. Because to me, it didn't make sense if we overspent by $10.9 million, but we have a clean audit. Am I getting that correct, that we have everything in place that says these are the procedures that we follow, but we didn't necessarily follow them?
I would like to try to respond to that.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the audit identifies whether our controls are adequate and whether people are following those controls. And both were, yes, they were adequate, they were reasonable, and people were following them. Could the procedures be tighter? Always an opportunity, but it doesn't necessarily merit an audit comment. But as you've heard from our finance folks, they are moving to tighten up our actual procedures and do things at a more often, at a narrower interval, so monthly or quarterly versus the interval that had been occurring. So,
okay.
So there's the difference with where you're at. Okay, so reasonable controls, follow those controls. Is it acceptable? Yes, but internally and through management, you know, in our discussions along with, you know, with our CEO, yes, we need to have tighter controls, do it more often, even though that's not necessary per the audit and per the rules of audit, and I don't remember which ones they follow, but we are going to do that so that we are not surprised. Okay?
So what you're saying is we hit all the marks per the requirements of the audit. However, we could have did better, and that was why we overspent.
Yep, we got all Bs. We ended up on the honor roll, but could we have done better with As? Yeah. How's that?
To the tune of $10 million.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's big, but
I mean, and that's my issue, is that's a huge number.
it is a huge number, but we're
Right.
also we're also $1/3 billion in terms of a budget.
Right.
And so it's material, but it's not huge, but it's a lot of money.
$10 million is a lot of money,
Well,
no matter which way you cut it up.
Well, yeah,
Dennis,
I'd
would
like
you-
to make one point, which I think is very important, because we've had time to think about this.
Yeah.
All this money was used to provide services to the constituencies we have through our providers. So I want to, and I know you're not applying this at all, I just want to make sure everybody understands that. This went to costs and expenditures within the mission of our organization. Did we, I think we're roughly at somewhere in the neighborhood of 2% or whatever go over? Yes, we did. If there was any problem with that, the audit would have pointed that out, and there was not. So I think in what we consider to be here at the table and speaking among ourselves and with the finance team, that we need to tighten up those procedures, that's absolutely the case. But that doesn't rise to the level of a finding in an audit. I think that's what Jonathan is trying to explain. So is it something we have to, and that's the job now of management and the team to make sure that that does not occur again.
All right?
Jonathan?
Yes, Dr.
Yeah, I have a comment also. So one of the remedies that I remember Dana mentioning was frequent FSRs. And can that be made a part of the financial reports periodically, or if there were any gaps there that can be brought to the attention of board? That's number one. The second thing is the utilization data, how that correlates to our reimbursements. That would be critical, because a lot of times we are providing services every day, but we don't get paid every day. And sometimes there is a gap in that, and we are waiting and waiting and waiting. So that kind of those kind of barriers should also be brought to the board so that we understand exactly where we are. Because these issues come up in with every provider at some point or another. So it's important that board be made aware of those gaps. Thank you.
And I just want to mention too that it makes sense, that these monies were used for those that we serve, but we also have to be cognizant of the services that we're providing so that we're not taking too much from one service to give to another, right? So that the whole point of having the budget and having the appropriations and the needs and having a, strategic plan of how we approach things. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping a closer eye on that, because to me, that is where I have the concern, because, we have a strategic plan, we have a budget set out for the services that we're going to provide, but we want to make sure that we're able to hit the marks of the services in each category that we're giving. And when we have an overspend to that extent, that's of concern, because one could be overgetting and the other not getting. So, thank you.
Okay.
Can I mention, I understand the $10 million. We talked about that quite a bit, but I think that I agree with our co-chair that we've used those dollars for services. It does mean we have to tighten up, and I think I mentioned that at a previous meeting, and I'm very interested in what the recommendations will be from the audit, so that they can say you need to work on this or that. But over the last few weeks, we have done some things in relation to trying to tighten our review, tighten up our process that we've been using. I think, and I could be speaking out of turn, but I think that this coming year, fiscal year, will be even better than it was, this past year, fiscal year 2022. So the thing is, it's been brought to our attention. I think we're focusing a little bit more on it with that finance team. We have some ideas that we'd like to propose later, and we'll get to that. But good that we were able to serve the people we were. Yes, hate to be $10 million over, because we grappled with that quite a bit of time. But I think that we're on the track to doing better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, I'm going to call for the question, for the motion to approve the fiscal year 22 audit, unless there's any other comments or questions. No, it's been moved, now I'm calling the question. Yes, so roll call.
Okay. Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Ms. May?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Dr. Hans?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
No.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Sheila, is that the last of the items to be approved for the, okay, before we move forward, with the CEO evaluation and things, I'd like to turn our attention back to an earlier item, the stories that inspire, because they're here now. I believe. Now we need to make sure that they have a working mic. And thank you guys for making it here. Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. I am presenting on behalf of Suzanne Weiner today, and she is hopefully enjoying some well-deserved time off with her family. So often we come to you and we talk about our community outreach and our partnerships, and I am thrilled I get to do this introduction today because a lot of what we do is really built on relationships and friendships and the alliances that we develop and cultivate as an organization and as individuals. Kano is really a good friend to OCHN, to our team and our outreach efforts. And one of the key supports that they have provided for us is ensuring that we hear the voices of young people, both youth, young adults, and really the wisdom they bring to the table in helping us identify the needs of the community is so valued and so appreciated. So 2 things that they've done most recently that I'm going to let him talk about, the Ascend Foundation. They did participate as a focus group for youth in our violence reduction prevention work. They also presented on a youth panel at the Minority Mental Health event, and I think they were the highlight of the day. It just made you really want to get up and continue to do the work and do it well. And we listened to what they said, Dr. P, and we're all taking notes because what they were talking about, social media and their goals and their dreams really will help us in our decisions moving forward. And so with that, I'm going to introduce my friend, Kano Phillips from the Ascend Foundation.
Hey, good evening, Board of Directors, good evening, Executive Board, and also Madam Chair. You know, it's a great honor to go ahead and be here today, you know, because ultimately, you see what we're fighting against out here. You know, it's really tough, especially when you start talking about dealing with our youth. The whole purpose of this organization even coming into existence was because of that point. You know, originally, I think I was asked to kind of talk about why the Ascend Foundation came into its inception to why we end up trickling off into what we have right here next to me, these young leaders. Basically, in short, my father served in the position of mayor of the city of Pontiac, and he was also in the House of Representatives. It was his time in the mayor's position where he had, in Pontiac, we're just historically bad with leadership when it comes to the executive and legislative branches working together. It got so much turmoil. I'm trying to go ahead and not blow my city up because I love my city, but the reality is there was so much turmoil in that position that he asked me one night, what can I possibly do to go ahead and try and help affect change within the walls of this city? Because right now, I feel like I'm ineffective being at the mayor's position because, you know, one thing about politics in Pontiac, you know, the city council can overturn anything that the mayor says, that with the strong mayor form of government. And so I told him the best way to do that would be to go ahead and start a nonprofit. But of course, you know, you can't go ahead and hold a leadership position on that political level and also run a nonprofit at the same time. So his last day in office was December 31st, 2009, and he decided he wanted to go ahead and have 1 year time just to go ahead and spend with my mother since he had been in politics since the 80s. And he never made it. He died 8 months later. And so I decided to go ahead and move forward with the thing that we talked about the most, which was building a vehicle that's going to not only touch people or households, but the most important factor was touching children. We have so many kids that are falling through the cracks, and quite frankly, some of the things that these kids are dealing with inside their households will make your soul cringe. It just, I don't know what happened with the generation that raised me to the generation that's raising them, and I have to, and our generation has to take some type of blame because ultimately we weren't raised the way that our kids, these kids are being raised right now. You know, we got a lot of generational issues that are happening now too, and unfortunately it's putting a nasty cycle in place. But that was the reason why we felt the need to go ahead and build something dealing with children specifically. Our programs from an Ascend Foundation standpoint, we have programs that deal with educational initiatives, life readiness programs, life preparedness programs, soft skill training, giving these kids all the tools that they're going to need to go ahead and effectively be able to go ahead and penetrate society and build a living for not only themselves, but also for their children and for their future families. So we're able to go and do that within educational systems, not only in Pontiac, but we do work all through Oakland County, as well as we do work in Wayne County and Genesee as well. But even beyond that, you know, we have give back initiatives because the one thing that I did miss, I don't know if all of you know the history of Pontiac, but during that period, Pontiac went through a real tough spot. We went in receivership first and foremost, where we went into state control, which meant all of our programs were stripped down. All of our properties were being sold off for pennies on a dollar. So we didn't have the funding to be able to put things in place to go ahead and help children. Right now, we're still trying to go ahead and bring back a community center. That's where we are right now in Pontiac. So we had that side of it. But then on the other side of it, the school district ended up going into a consent agreement, which means state control as well. That was on a fiscal standpoint as well as an academic standpoint. So as you can see, we're on our bare knuckles, and there was such a need to go ahead and provide programming and avenues to be able to grab these kids and give them something to go ahead and be incubated through, to be proud of, to go ahead and develop them into the future leaders and the impacts that we need them to be in society. And so that's when we decided to go ahead and move forward with our Ascend Foundation Truth Youth Coalition. That started back in 2016. And the whole purpose of that was we had a mentoring program that was in place forever. But the reality is, I did mentoring, but the thing about mentoring, that we have to go ahead and it kills me because so many people want to go ahead and throw out the word mentorship. Mentoring is not a game. And don't step up in the life of some kind of child, in the lives of children, if you're not able to go ahead and run a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so that's the problem that we were having. So many people, organizations, because everyone wants to have a nonprofit nowadays. Nonprofit's like a get-rich-quick scheme to a lot of people. They think it's a fast way for them to get money, and we already know that's not the way this goes. Believe me, I left corporate America to go to nonprofit, and believe me, the money's nowhere near the same. But it's okay. You want to go ahead and make your life and existence count for something so much more than just self. And they're it. They're the ones that we need to go ahead and empty ourselves, our heart, bodies, and souls into. And so that's the reason why we decided to go ahead and build a mentoring program when we got our money in a position to build a mentoring staff. Because the thing about mentoring, I can't go ahead. We've had over 450 kids that have come through our program. I can't touch 450 kids even if I tried. If you can go ahead and clone me 20 times over, it won't be enough. So we were able to go ahead and build a team. But the thing that's really encouraging is when I look to the right of me, these are two of our original kids that came through the program back in 2016. And to watch what they've been able to go ahead and do with their lives has been absolutely sensational. This is what it should be about. And so when we built this coalition, we've had three focuses. Number one was mentorship. Second one was dealing with substance abuse. The reality is we can't be foolish enough to go ahead and know that when we're inside of schools, kids have this thing about them where when they see these gray hairs sprouting out all over me, you know, it kind of puts up a little bit of a wall. And so that's why a lot of the conversation and dialogue that they might be privy to, we may not be able to go ahead and get. But once they're able to identify them, we got to make sure we train them up so once they do go ahead and get the signs, they're able to adequately put this in a position where we can segue them into professional help. But while they're getting professional help, we can bring them back into us to go ahead and wrap our arms around them for the long haul. That's why this partnership that we have with CNS has been so important, especially with CCBHC. That's been absolutely huge because now it takes all the excuses off the table when we come to the mental health side. Because what we have is, in the African American and Latino communities, we shy away from mental health disparities. You know, I'm not crazy. I'm not a nut. I'm not going. You know, you crazy. You think I'm going to do this. But ultimately, I said it before and I will say it again. Mental health disparities is just like if you have cancer cells in your body. If you don't do anything about it, eventually it's going to overtake your body, and you know, and we already know where that goes from there. Same thing with mental health. You don't go ahead and wave a magic wand, clap your hands, and it disappears. That's why it's so important that we go ahead and build a vehicle to be able to embrace that different dialogue that we need to go ahead and have to be able to affect change within the walls of the Pontiac community for sure, but even surrounding communities. Because even when we did start out with the Youth Coalition, it was just Pontiac kids only. Now we have kids from surrounding communities actually touching. Now, don't get me wrong, the majority of our kids are Pontiac kids because it's just the way the way we have it built. But there's no in the world we're going to go ahead and turn our back on any children that's coming looking for help. It's our job to go ahead and provide anything that we can to help smooth out their pathway to become, effective in this world. So that's what we've been able to go ahead and build with this. And the partnerships with OCHN and some of the other entities, it's been huge because ultimately mental health is one piece. Substance abuse is another piece. But ultimately, I can't be foolish enough to go ahead and think, I have 2 degrees. None of my, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I have to understand how far I can take it, and then I got to segue it off into the professional side. But the thing that I do know is I know kids, I know family dynamics, and I know my community. That's where my power is. But partnerships like what we have taking place here is huge. The fact that I can go ahead and call you up, Christine, and go ahead and talk to you about different things that we need to go ahead and try and help provide the full suite of services for our kids, it's huge. Because not only is it our kids, it's our families. Because you can't go ahead and change the life of a child if every time they go home and their mom and daddy is in a state of chaos, the kid is going to go ahead and eventually it's going to rub off on the child. And it takes me right back to the original statement. Some of these things that these kids are dealing with, I used to say the dumbest thing ever. When I used to see a kid that ran into a school and they were angry, I used to, what you so angry about? Cool out. That was the dumbest thing I could have humanly said, because if you really know what's happening inside these households, literally, you would understand what they're going through. You got 12 and 13-year-old kids raising their siblings inside these households. How unfair is that? Right now, you got a lot of these parents are pushing parenthood off into their grandparents. So now grandmama and granddaddy got to go ahead and assume the responsibility of mama and daddy again. This is the things that we're dealing with right now in these households. But ultimately, the ones that fall through the cracks are these two individuals like them. But, failure is not an option when it comes to them. And so that's why I'm excited to go ahead and tell you firsthand from a nonprofit standpoint the reason why we are in existence and the reason why we fight to do the things we do and the reason and how we got to what we got. But I wanted to go ahead and bring a couple of my young leaders here because maybe, I could tell you with tongue blue in the face, what the experience looks like from an adult standpoint, but I want to give it to you from some of our young talented and gifted. These two right here are absolute rock stars. And for the record, too, any kid that comes into our program, every kid's going to go ahead, not only will they graduate, but they're going to go off, whether it be a 4-year institution, a 2-year institution, a specialty school, skilled trades, because I don't know, somewhere down the line, we think that, we so programmed to say a kid has to go to college. You can make a dynamic living for yourself with a skilled trade. But it's our job to go ahead and open up those avenues for them to be able to see exactly what they could possibly become. But for us to go ahead and do that, we have to we have to humble ourselves and be mindful enough to know education is just not absolutely the key. Not 4-year institution education, But a skilled trade is a monster. You know, I know somebody right now with a master's degree who's sitting over here literally working at McDonald's right now because they can't even find a job and they still got these student loans. I know someone right now who just graduated, 4 years ago. Now they're a journeyman, sitting in a program making almost six figures. We got to be able to open that up for all of our individuals, to let them know exactly what it is that they can go ahead and maximize their life potential to. But let me stop talking. Let me go ahead and pass this on to these two individuals here. I'm absolutely proud of them. Both of these are two of our young leaders. I mean, they were young leaders as kids, and now they're young adults. But who can go ahead and better tell you a story than two individuals that's actually lived it? You know, lived it, breathed it, and embodied the whole essence of what we're trying to go ahead and do from not only a foundation standpoint, but also from a coalition standpoint. So I would like to take this time to introduce to you, first of all, to my immediate right, Mr. Brian Becks, and to my double right is going to be Ms. Lauren McNair. So I want to go ahead and pass this microphone over to you to kind of let them know exactly some of the things that you've seen in your journey with us, with the coalition.
First off, I want to thank everybody for allowing us to be here today. It's huge to be able to come in and talk to you guys and just be in situations like this. Like Mr. Kano said, me and Lauren, we've been here since the inception of the program in 2016, and we were both in high school at the time, and like Mr. Kano said, we're both in college now. I think the biggest thing about being part of this at such a young age was being able to be humbled quickly. There's a lot of different things that you see when you work with just the youth in general, and then once you're able to see what a kid is going through and you're able to talk to them and see what the problem is, it really humbles you from the little problems that you're going through in life. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of us, we have a problem at work, or we have a problem with our friends in outside life, and then that's kind of like the end-all, be-all. But then some of these kids, like Mr. Kano said, they have to go home and figure out what they're going to feed their siblings later, and they're 13, 14 years old. Another thing is, I think being able to give back to the community has been a huge thing. A lot of kids our age are kind of out with their friends, doing whatever, and I'm not saying we don't do that, but at the same time, we also have our priorities in a different way. We decided at a young age that giving back was more important than going out and doing things that a lot of our friends were doing, because we saw the bigger picture. And that's one thing I want to say thank you to Mr. Kano about, is just always drilling in our head that the priority is bigger than us, and I think that's huge. So, yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting us be here today with all of you important people. I'm Lauren McNair, as Mr. Kano said, and I have been a part of the SIN Foundation since 2016, when I was literally still in middle school. And the SIN Foundation literally taught me, like, so much. Because back when I was in middle school and, like, first getting into the SIN Foundation, I didn't know anything about drugs. I didn't know anything about mental health, but, like, they taught me about that, and so now I know, like, what to do, what it looks like, why it's so bad, because, you know, like, you see a bunch of people doing it in high school, you know, in the bathrooms. They're like, it takes the edge off. It's so fun. Like, it's not gonna hurt, even though it does. And, like, I learned about that stuff in the SIN Foundation. And then I also learned about mental health disparities and issues like that, because I, like, didn't know about that before I became a part of the foundation. And it helped me recognize some of those signs in myself, and they've given me, like, plenty of opportunities to seek help for myself, which is why I'm able to, like, come out and even talk about this to you guys. And yeah, and then I also really love how the SIN Foundation taught me the importance of giving back to the community and helping other kids, so, like, they can be like me. Because if I hadn't been a part of the foundation, I probably would have definitely still been struggling with anxiety and depression and stress. And so when I see like other kids out there who are struggling, like I'm able to help them now, and I just feel like that's really great. And being a part of the SIM Foundation kind of like taught me what I wanted to be, because right now I'm in college, I'm in biology pre-med, and I want to be a doctor. Because like through the SIM Foundation, I found out that I like giving back and I like helping people, and that kind of like guided me to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so, yeah, I really appreciate everything they've done for me and everything I'm able to do for my community now because of it.
And thank you, Brian and Lauren. And yeah, excuse me, I'm a big softie, so I'm looking like my eyeballs are sweating a little bit. Y'all know what it is. But there's a lot of stories like them that we have in the walls of this coalition. You know, but to sit back and watch where they started to where they are right now, it is sensational. And there's so many true stories. I'm talking about not the movie of the week. I'm not talking about something fictional. I'm talking about true to life, real success stories. And they're sitting right all around in Pontiac and all around Pontiac. So that's why it's so important for us to go ahead and be able to give everything that we got, and I do mean everything. If you don't come to this foundation willing to roll up your sleeves and go ahead and mortgage the farm, we don't want you. We're not going to put you on staff. We're definitely not going to put you around no kids. Definitely. But that's what we've been able to go ahead and build. And the thing that's really even more magnificent about it is now I brought them back and I've hired them and put them on staff, because who's going to be able to talk about a program better than someone who's lived it, breathed it, and now here they go and they're pulling up kids, elementary school kids, and bringing them up to where they need to go ahead and be. You know, that's what this should be about. Those are healthy cycles. And the words can't express how much I appreciate you two for that. You know, you and all of the rest of your peers. Y'all have been absolutely amazing. You know, and like I said, you know, y'all mean the world to me, so let me get off of that side of it. Because like I said, I'm a softie, but I really want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be able to present to you. You know, OCHN, I thank you for the opportunity to go ahead and have our kids be on display to do something that they just love to do, which is giving back to not only their community, but to any and everybody that's in that same pocket that they can go ahead and give some type of a lesson to, that maybe they can go ahead and reach that we just can't reach. You know, and that's huge for them. You know, mental health. Pontiac, we got a huge violence issue taking place. You know, ultimately, you know, the quickest way for you to go ahead and stop violence, number one, is to figure out a way financially, figure out a better means for you to be able to create a living for yourself. But then also, too, mental health is real. Mental health is real. You know, the reality is I can't ask somebody I can't ask a tiger who's built to be a tiger, you know, to go ahead and not chew on a steak that's in front of it, because that's what a tiger is, unless you go ahead and train it or tame it to be something else. But that's why we need to go ahead and do the things that we do. So, but please, I'd like to open up for questions. I think, Christine, am I out of pocket with that?
No, you are not.
Okay. Yeah, I would open up for questions that anyone might have. So,
Sarah?
I wanted to thank you guys for coming here. I was raised in one of those families that you were talking about, and like Brian said, I didn't have that support, so I did end up running around with my friends, getting into trouble. And I'm so glad that you guys had that support early, so you didn't have to struggle to get back to where you already are. So I'm really proud of you. Thank you for coming.
thank you for that. Because stories like that, I think a lot of people kind of repress. You know, they're able to go through life and end up becoming successful sometimes. And I was one of those individuals, too, I wanted to push back my trials and tribulations. And I had great parents, too, but I still found myself with a juvenile record. I was heading to prison until something happened that's totally changed my life. The reason, I don't think I've ever even told them this, the reason why I had to go to school in Louisiana, because I had some people here in Pontiac that was after me, and I wouldn't have made it a year. So that's why my parents sent me out of state to go out to Louisiana to go to school. And I was able to go ahead and come out with 2 degrees. So, you know, those are the type of stories that we need. So thank you for sharing that. I know what that looks like. Thank you.
John Paul?
So, back in 2005, I worked on your dad's campaign for Pontiac mayor, so Clarence Phillips.
Yes, sir.
So, great man. So,
Thank you.
I think he'd be very proud of you. You know, I mean, he would be inspired by you, because you embody everything that he stood for. I knew him, and I got to know him well working on his campaign. So, I think he'd be very proud of you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Torres. I do.
And what you say is so true. You know, I work in criminal justice system and youth justice for several years in Washtenaw County, and I wish we had had an organization like this in there, because we see so many kids coming in and out of the juvenile justice system, predominantly African American and Latino, who just don't have any direction. They have no resources. You know, the home environment is not enough and they're just going down a path. And it is that mentorship. And what you say about mentorship is so true. It's a long haul. You know, you can't just say, I want to mentor somebody and be around here and there, because the kids are going to latch on, you know, and you have to be there to show them the right way, and they crave that attention. So I appreciate what you do, you know, and I think you're doing an awesome thing. Pontiac needs it. Pontiac needs you. And, you know, you're here in Oakland County, which is awesome, because I'm based out of Waterford, and Waterford needs it too, you know. So I'm glad you're serving Oakland County, but keep up the good work. You know, you're changing lives, and that's obvious with these two right here. So keep it up, and I know your dad's proud of you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Torres. Thank you. Let me also compliment and comment on this, because I knew your dad, worked with your dad throughout his campaign, and the work that he did in the state and also there at the city, and the dreams that he had, and with what you've already accomplished. So I want to thank you for that. In addition to the work that you've been doing with the Pontiac school districts, you know, and I don't know if you've mentioned to them I want to call them pep rallies, when they call the school students all sitting in the auditorium talking about what they're doing, what their dreams are, and what have you, listening to them. And not just Pontiac schools, but even the charter schools. So I thank you very, very much. And see, I get to boast because these two young people come out of my church as well. In addition to that, from all of them from wherever they were, little to what have you. But another benefit when you talk about giving back is because each one of them now going to college, and those kids who graduated last year and this year have said, we're coming back. We want to start our own summer camp to make sure that kids don't fall through the cracks, and that's part of giving back. So thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for doing what you guys do. You know, Lauren, just both of you just doing great examples for the other kids. Great examples for the other kids. So thank you. And I should make this comment. Last week, 420 kids were there at the church for the week because of some of the stuff you guys do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Christina.
And Mike, okay, perfect. Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for sharing your story, and I'm really proud of all three of you too. It's amazing. It can be scary to go out and talk in front of strangers like this, and you all did so amazing. And please never stop sharing your story, because you never know who's listening, who you could be impacting and inspiring. I mean, look, there's people listening online right now, right? And even me, I'm a mental health clinician in Pontiac, and this was just a really beautiful reminder for me that the work is so important, right? And it makes me proud. It makes me proud to be serving young people in the city. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Thank you. The reality is, you know, also, and one last thing, you know, a lot of people like to go ahead and I call them cherry pickers. They like to take the kids that are already doing pretty well, you know, and then grab on and latch on to them and say, oh, yeah, okay, we're good. You know, this is what I've been able to go ahead and do. That kid was already heading to Harvard. But, you know, but the reality is you want to go and act like you were the ones that did it. I like the real tough cases. I like the ones that everybody wants to go ahead and say is you know, they're write-offs. You know, these two weren't that. But we have people that are in our group that have been that. And to watch the turnaround and watch what they've been able to go ahead and do, that's what this has got to be. Because no one's a lost cause. No one's a lost cause. And the fact of the matter, we can curl our lips and tell a kid that you might as well give up on life. What does that say about us as adults? So I just wanted to go ahead and say that, because I think sometimes when we say mentoring, I think a lot of people kind of can misconceive the fact that cherry picking and going into the gutter, it's two different things. We like the gutter, not the cherries on the tree. So,
Thank you. Okay.
Malachi, how you doing, Ms. Newman?
I'm fine.
and I'm about to bust, so I don't know what to say other than it's a pleasure to have young people such as yourself that are poised and mature and speak very well representing my city. I was born and raised in Pontiac, and I know that we take a lot of hits, but there's a lot of good people in Pontiac, and a lot of good work is going on. And the Sim Foundation is one of them. So thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Ms. Newman. Thank you.
Other board members? I just wanted to say thank you all for sharing. Brian, Laura, Keno, thank you. You said that you started your peer programs in 2016, and I'm thinking, gosh, I've been on this board for quite a while, and I remember when we came up with the idea that we needed to have peers to provide mental health, developing disabled, so support to others, and how long that's been going on. You know, if we're lucky, I think it's been going on about 6, maybe 7 years, so not even close to where you guys are. So we're following what you're doing and trying to apply it. So I really do appreciate you guys being on that bleeding edge for us.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Doctor?
Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to say thank you to all of you, Mr. Phillips, for what you're doing, and you two young people, Brian and Lauren. Greatly appreciate you sharing your story, just echoing what everyone else is saying. And like Ms. Newman said, I have to say, born and raised in Pontiac, and I'm so proud of all of you. And thank you, and keep going, okay?
Appreciate that, Ms. Kyle. Thank you.
Now you know I was so excited.
And look, we apologize for our tardiness. We had our youth retreat today from 1 o'clock to 6 over in Auburn Hills, and actually, they tried to kill me in there today, but we had about 70 plus kids in there just trying to go ahead and sharpen their knives to go ahead and be more effective out here. So, but thank you for that. But I felt the need because I didn't know if you told them that, Christy, or do you think I was coming in late? Did you tell them I was just late to the party?
I think they knew.
Oh, you knew? Okay.
We knew. We adjusted our agenda to make accommodations.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No.
We weren't going to not have you, talk once, knowing that you were coming.
Appreciate that, though. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Dan.
I just have to say something. I know our board speaks and makes statements, but you make us proud. You made us look so good in terms of the sincerity and what people shared at our minority mental health event. You made the day. You made the event, and you touched so many people, and just having you all talk and speak from the heart is amazing. So whatever you can do and whatever we can do to work together and continue, we're committed to that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lassenby. Thank you. Okay. Everybody, have a beautiful evening.
And now you know why this is the favorite part of every meeting that I chair, actually every meeting I attend. So thank you guys again. Next on the agenda is a report out from the Evaluation Committee. And so this is sort of a repeat from the Committee of the Whole when I reported this out earlier. But our CEO Evaluation Committee met on June 26th, 5:30. We reviewed the board survey results. And Dana's overall mean, average or mean score was 3.53. Her median score was a 4.0. At Dana's request, we went into closed session so that we could discuss, so we could have discussion with her and provide feedback. And then once that was completed, we voted and moved back into open session. And just, I'll put a caveat on there. As you know, when we're in closed session, we don't really log or display the notes of things that go on, so I'm not going to go into that detail. At any rate, we did have that, went back into open session, and then we had some further discussion. A motion was made by Mr. Cowan and seconded by Mr. Furman to report out and propose to the overall board that we provide a 6% bonus, performance bonus to Dana's current base salary and a 3% net increase to her base. There was a significant amount of discussion on that motion between the 5 board members that are on the CEO Evaluation Review Committee. So that discussion covered a number of topics, again, in open session. So the method, because in prior years we'd used the mean score, which is a fancy word for average, versus the ratings, against a ratings range versus a median score, against a ratings range to develop. But that's what we use for the motion this year. And again, these are guidelines, but we use those things as well as the results as guidelines to build that motion. And then as well, our discussion about our financials as well. So there was a variety of, things proposed for a bonus based on the numbers, based on the performance, based on what's going on, from that amount to a lower amount of 3, even down to discussion of the bonus being a 0 bonus because of our current financials. So again, these are guidelines and not hard rules, and there is nothing specific in the terms and conditions that tell us to use a specific thing. That's just that those things are there for the guidance. But that a bonus and a pay increase is merited, then we should do that. So based on all that, we did have a motion. It was voted on. It was passed. That motion was, as I said earlier, for a 6 and a 3, 6% performance bonus and a 3% net increase in the base salary. That motion passed 4-1. Okay, and then we reported that result out at the committee of the whole meeting last week, and then tonight we're going to be making that motion to the board that we provide a 6% bonus on her current base salary and a 3% net increase. So if someone from our committee wants to make that, that's my report. If someone from our committee wants to make that motion, I would appreciate it.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Is there a second?
Second?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second. Oh, no, Kaya? Okay. Or Adam, did you make that second?
I did, but
okay.
I'll relinquish if...
We have seconds, we have support. If you'll list both Adam and Malkaya. Is there any discussion on our motion? Yes, John.
I'll just, I was the no vote. I'll just say I spent a lot of time doing this evaluation. I read every comment. I thoroughly looked through all of the documents that I had, and I landed on the number that I landed on. The evaluation number that I landed on, it's public record. You all have it. You can look at it. It was below what the average we came up with was. I voted no, primarily due to the deviation in our budget for the fiscal year 21-22. In addition, the fiscal year 22 projected costs that we still have that we have to rectify to the tune of $5 million. I understand, the monies are going to the oil services. I'm a stickler on budget, the appropriations of it, the way the dollars are to flow. We set it out because we want to see services put forth in a specific way. We need to make sure that we're providing those services appropriately to all of those who receive services within our network. So when I look at the 6%, that I see that as a lot of money. It's roughly, if my numbers are wrong, about $15,000. Then that includes the overall net increase to the salary of 3%. And then the contract also does afford, if I'm correct, also any other increases that would be given to the greater OCHN staff, cost of living, and those things. But I just couldn't, bring myself to that. So respectfully, that is why I voted no in the committee, and it is why I will vote no tonight. Thank you.
Dennis.
So everyone knows this program, in terms of doing the evaluation, is part of Dana's our executive director, her contract. This is not something that we just do magnanimously. I like the fact that a CEO signs a contract that says, I will be judged by my performance. I've seen all kinds of contracts in the private sector and the public sector where bonuses are automatic, and there's not even a discussion. I mean, as long as the place isn't going to hell in a handbasket, and that's not our standard here. We have a higher standard. Those bonuses are given. So I like the fact that you agreed to that, and I hope that that will be something that will continue in the contract that we will be talking about in the near future. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into judging performance, but I felt that my vote was reflective of what the board, the entire board, collectively, how they judged the performance. And it was a high mark. It was not a low mark. It was 3.5 and a 4% if you go on median, which is, or 4 if you go on the median score. So were there, and certainly there was a vigorous debate and things that any CEO needs to hear in terms of criticism and areas to improve upon. But I believe that the board as a whole, when you looked at the evaluations, and we also looked at the comments, I looked at all of them. And I think that on balance, the board felt that this was a very good performance and should be rewarded. Now, I want to also point out this bonus is lower than the bonus you've received percentage-wise the last 2 years. So if to the degree there's any kind of message to be sent, that's been done. So I think, again, on balance, because this is a very complex job, we're a 400 million plus organization that has gone through very difficult times, and not the organization, but because of who we serve, and with the COVID situation and everything that we've had to move through, worker issues for our providers, and I think I feel better about the organization than I have at any time I've been on the board, and that's why I voted the way I did, and intend to vote yes today.
Okay, thank you, guys. Vijaya? Okay.
We'll go down
Sarah.
the line. We'll go down the line.
All right,
I just
Sarah,
had
I
a
recognize you.
Thank you. Is it my understanding that, so within the contract, there's levels of like percent points for the eval? You take everybody's in and it's a point system. But is it my understanding that you guys chose to like round up? Or take an average instead of the actual number that was given in the eval? I wasn't able to make it to the last meeting.
Okay, so we have a chart that has thresholds of different levels, and the numbers are based on the overall score and it's not a total accumulation. It's a summary of those numbers, because we have 12 board members. They're theoretically with 10 questions. There's the possibility that you could have 50-some points or 500. Anyhow, there was a disconnect between what's in the chart and being able to land you exactly where that is in those ranges, first of all. Second of all, the chart itself is designed for overachievement. So if Dana had earned less points from the survey, she might have actually had no bonus for performance. And then it goes to 1%, 3%, 6%, and then goes all the way up to 15. But to get to a 15, basically Dana would have needed to knock everything out of the park from a performance, not an effort, from an achievement perspective for the organization. So yes, and as Dennis pointed out, her bonus this year is actually less than last year's bonus.
Right, I'm not asking that question. What I'm asking is that it fell above the parameters for it fell below the parameters in the chart for the 6%, but because it was very close, it was taken as, and instead of just like the actual number, the executive committee decided to use the average.
No, okay, can I answer that?
Sure.
Okay, you're absolutely right. That chart, which is a guide, it's not, we don't have a strict formula here because Dana is not like a commission salesperson. Ooh, if you get so much, here's your percentage. So there is, we're making a subjective determination and trying to put it into a formula. So there is this chart, which I understand was not utilized, was used as a guide, but was exceeded the last 2 years. So what occurred was the raw score was 3.53. To get to the 6% was 3.6. That's 0.7%. We felt, after discussion, that given that the median was a 4, that merited going to that level and doing the 6%. So,
Specifically, if Dana had earned somewhere between 1 to 20 points, 0 bonus. 21 to 25, 1%. So 26 to 32%. 31 to 35, 3%. She had a 3.55, so she was over that threshold of 3.5 or 35. So that would be but the chart's in whole numbers, so that's 36 to 40, and that's 6%. So that's where she would have landed at. Either you round down to 35 or you round up to 36. You know, that's where it is. A 41 to a 45 would have been 10%, and at 46 to 50, 15%. So definitely to overachieve, and that's what we did. Hope that answered your question. Okay. Bajaya.
Yeah, I will vote yes because we have, whatever materials we had available to us, we have graded her. Basically, this is a grade. But I think we still, I will go back to what I said about the survey, that it is lacking in input from the people that we serve, people that provide services, and the direct care workers who actually do that every day for more than 8 hours sometimes. So I think in the future, it's not about this particular ED, but in the future, we should include input from the greater community more than what the survey, if you look at, the most input was internal, the board and the people who work in this building, and that is not sufficient. Thank you.
And I want to respond to that. I absolutely agree with you, and I think one of the challenges with that and why we get so little feedback, period, is because a month before our survey that went out to the public was the OCHN's General Needs Survey, which is the big survey, and they get 700 or 800, respondees, which is a lot, but it's still a small percentage of the persons we serve and the families in the extended care and support. And so I wish there was a way that we could marry or leverage that one, because we get so much more feedback from persons served and persons delivering services.
Yeah, but Jonathan, you are a statistics person. You know numbers better than anybody else.
Yeah.
That the surveys are just as good as the methods are. So I think that's where we need to focus.
And
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and we've been challenged to get those responses because we would like to know what does the public think for both things. Christina.
Okay, I have a question first. John Paul made a comment about, so there's the 3% wage increase that's being recommended, and then is there also an annual wage increase that's aligned with what OCHN staff gets each year?
From what I understand, yes. I do not know what the annual increase is that the OCHN staff gets, and as board members, we're not involved. Although they may tell us, we don't have direct input into what that percentage is for all persons that work for OCHN.
Okay. I don't think I have other questions, just comments to kind of explain my vote tonight. I do feel like the mean versus median thing is a little strange. I understand, though, the way it was explained. And I think if we have complaints about the structure of the system, can we change it, right? Why did we keep using it?
That's probably the easier of the questions to answer. We tried to change it last year, and we
Uh-huh.
ran into a wall, because it's been established as part of that contract, and we didn't have the means.
Okay.
We had no provisions in the contract to allow changes to either
Mm.
how we evaluated, or the evaluation chart, or
Okay.
anything else without opening the whole contract up. Now, the good news is, this year, her contract expires on August 12th.
Yeah.
We need to come up, assuming we do want to retain her, and I think we do as a board, we have to get to that point to reach a new contract with her, with new terms and conditions
Mhm.
that allow for that, as well as the effort to establish how we measure her, on
Yeah.
what we measure, and the methods that we use.
Who is helping the board with that? Who are we consulting with?
Can we hold that
Oh, sorry.
question
Yes.
till the next topic, which is
Okay.
the CEO contract
Yes.
status,
Yes.
and focus on this motion, if
Okay.
that's okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, sorry. No more questions, I don't think, but
All
just
right.
the comments. I would like to see in future years that we have more of a discussion as a board. I understand in the contract, we have the committee that's set up, but I feel like I just missed out on a really important discussion back and forth. 'Cause I do feel a little disappointed that I don't think I've heard a lot of feedback about, okay, for performance, right? That's what we're evaluating. Normally in a performance evaluation, we talk about strengths, right? And Dana has so many strengths. I wish I could speak publicly like you can. But also, like, I don't think I've heard a lot of feedback about what are we working on? What are we looking for in the following year? The different comments in the survey, right? I was looking back at different comments from the community. So maybe more of a full board, more discussion, and especially for the contract process, right? And I'd like to see how much it would cost to maybe have a third party help us with the evaluation. I know effectiveness is important, but that was one of the comments collected in the survey results. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you are aware that while we have a committee that meets, and there's so many number of us that are designated to it, that does not preclude other board members from attending, even in the closed session. Just like when we had the rules committee, for bylaws, there was the core, and others could attend as well and participate. So there is that, and we will be looking, depending on how the outcome of this new contract is, for insight and opinion and perspective. All right. Yes, John Paul.
So just a couple of comments. So the chart that we go by, the only copy of the chart that I have is an email from Sarah Guadalupe on September 11th of 2020. Is that the one that we're working off of?
It is, and I was not at the meeting that was one of the few that I missed where it was voted and approved to adopt that chart.
Okay.
So, but it was voted and adopted to be aligned with the actual CEO professional services contract.
Who voted on it? Was it
It was our board.
Our entire board, or was it the executive committee?
Well, at the time we had the
This would have been
evaluation
prior,
committee put it
right.
together, but then that was presented to the board overall to vote on it. So it was
'Cause
a full board vote.
So I think we need to square this up a little better in the new contract, because it does say in the contract the bonus, and then it says the max amount, but there's no chart. You know, we should have something that is structured and in place. So that's one thing. I like the third party idea, and even if it costs money, you know, that's one of those things where you pour money into something that is going to give you, you know, good gains and reliable information, just to make sure that there's no issues. And then thirdly, I would note that even on the chart that we're going from, she's just above the 35, in between the 36, but she's not at the 36. But we are giving the higher 6%, but I would note that she's not at the 36, she's in the in-between, but I get, you know, I was part of the conversation, and the committee as a whole decided to go up.
Right.
But I am voting no, thank you.
Okay, so I'll respond to that item just as a statistician kind of guy and data-driven one. If you've ever looked at the tax tables, if you ever had to do your own IRS taxes, without software, without TurboTax, and it was the tax table, typically it's as if something exceeds a number, then you use the next higher echelon in the table. So it's not, so it's things below something, or if something exceeds the number, you go to the next chart. That's how you would normally build a matrix.
So when we do the chart, for the next contract, we should put that as a notation.
To interpret
no
that
question.
better. And again, it's still a guideline.
Right.
Okay? So, all right, is there any other discussion on this? Okay, I'm glad we could have this discussion. It is important to have transparency and concerns raised and addressed. So I appreciate it. Before we vote, I just want to thank the CEO Evaluation Review Committee, and I would hope the other board members do that as well, as we spend a lot of time, all 3 years, but especially this year, in trying to set things up, make sure the process is there, have the evaluations, the surveys, the interpretations, the discussions, and the discussion and frank conversations in closed session with Dana on things. So a lot of effort went into this, so I appreciate all of you who served on the CEO Evaluation Review Committee this year, so thank you. And with that, I'm calling the question, so a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Ms. May? No. Ms. Root? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Dr. Hans?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
No.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries with, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
9 and 3.
9 to 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Officially, we authorize your bonus and pay increase. Thank you. Okay. I believe that the next item on the agenda would be, based on our earlier motion on the agenda, would be for a report out on progress with the CEO's new contract. Dennis? Well, is it, and then we have other business? Okay. Well, then we're going to hold off from that and just go into consent agenda next. Okay. All right, so our consent agenda includes the board minutes, meeting minutes and reports, et cetera. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. So it's been moved and supported. As a consent agenda, there is no discussion. So we move to a roll call vote to approve consent agenda items. Whenever you are ready.
Yes.
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 Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Young, did I get you?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mark you. Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda would be other business? Okay. So first, the July study session. Sheila, if you would. Thank you.
Okay, so, we do not have a study topic that was, identified by the board for July. And, so I just want to know how to move forward. When we did the agenda planning, I think that's typically because usually July gets canceled for the last couple of years. So, and I just noticed that we didn't have a study topic. So I just didn't know if we wanted to move forward with canceling the July or what the board's wishes are.
So if you're considering a topic for study, and we usually spend about 2 hours or so doing a deep dive into it, that also means that the staff needs to do suitable preparation, and it's about a week from now. So is there any topic that's pressing that you feel we need to do a deep dive in for July at this time?
I also want to note the August study session is on doing a draft of proposed budget 2024 and the annual plan for 2024. So that's for you guys to take a first draft look at it, and then it'll be again in the COW meeting, and then you got 2 chances for approval for August and September if we need to move to September.
So again, I'll ask, is there a topic that we feel we need to discuss? Hearing none, I will make the motion that we do not have a July study session.
Okay.
Thank you, Melkaya. Any discussion on it? We will still have an executive committee meeting because we do have pressing items, but we will not have a study session, assuming this motion passes. And I'll do it on voice vote. Any discussion, Bijaya?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree that, I think there should not be any study session for one reason alone, that there is not enough time for staff to prepare. But what I have heard from the community in the last 1 week or so, that the leadership at this organization has expanded tremendously. A lot of new positions have been added, but they don't know what these people do. So at some point, either in a study session or somewhere, if we could be reintroduced to those positions, not to the people, but those positions and what exactly they are responsible for, and more so, how does that impact the people that we serve? How does it improve their lives? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's been noted. Okay. All those in favor of no July session, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Yes, Sheila.
Would you like me to add that topic to the August study session? Or you want to focus on the budget?
I think the budget is pressing.
Okay.
But I do believe that we do need to understand the organizational structure, roles and responsibilities, how that promotes the mission of the organization. Did I capture it correctly? Okay, thank you. And if we could do that if we did that in September, or if we did that at the committee of the whole, that may help others in the public also understand the structure and how things work.
I could put it on for September.
Dana, I'm sorry, I'm going to defer to Dana first.
I would think we could give you that information in writing prior to that, so that when we meet, you can see it and we can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. But either way, it should be public, just so people do understand what we do, because we don't have an identity crisis, but people sometimes wonder, what is it that OCHN does?
Yeah, my point was not that we need to understand. We pretty much, most of us understand organizational structures and at least have some idea what these positions are meant for. But it is for the people that we serve.
Then I would suggest that we put this on under policy topic at a committee of the whole then.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's such a topic is really what I was proposing or trying to look at. in relation to the community knowing what we do, but even more that we know what we do, and the groups that are associated with us. And so I think that would be great discussion, you know, for us to have. And my buddies here is going to keep me legal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So the next on the, we've covered it? We're okay. Did we cover executive committee meeting, whether we're still having that, correct?
Yes, but this was more to the added agenda item because I added the contract negotiation under the executive committee meeting. So
Okay.
is that fine as a topic under that agenda?
It is,
Okay.
because it is our executive committee that roughs in the
Right.
contract along with an outside. By the way, we are using an outside attorney, a third party, to actually build that relationship and cement the next three. If it's next 3 years or next 5 years, I don't know. But as well, the idea of a third party to do an evaluation would be an interesting construct. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn the table over to Dennis, to you, to give a report out on status on with our attorneys and the CEO contract.
One thing before I do that, with respect to the executive committee meeting, we usually hold those at 5 o'clock. Would it be possible to do it at 4 o'clock? The executive, could they make it at 4 o'clock on the next Thursday? Adam, is that okay with you? Or John Paul?
I can't do that.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, all right.
I'm rushing to make 5, so.
Okay, we'll do 5 then.
And if you're late, I have to dance.
All right. So, with respect to the contract, the executive committee is going to be reviewing the contract and probably modifying the contract. So, we have spent a lot of time on the evaluation process, and quite frankly, that kind of tees up the contract, because as we've heard from some of you in the board tonight, there's some issues you believe might merit some more definition. So we'll do that and take those comments into consideration. But as a practical matter, we now will be fully engaged in that process now that the evaluation is over. However, the contract is up on August 12th. So as a practical matter, we still want to have an executive director. We will not have the contract done by then. We will start that process in earnest with our outside counsel next Thursday. We have already talked to him, and I'm kind of the point person with him, so we've already talked to him. He's had some feedback, but he's looking for more comprehensive feedback, and that would be what our discussion will be at the next executive committee. So I would like to propose that we extend the contract for 60 days, pending the discussions and negotiations, because I think we all want to continue with that leadership, but we just have the technicality that this, I believe it's August 12th contract comes to an end, and we won't have that, most likely will not have that completed by that date. In fairness, because the parties have to go back and forth a little bit, and then we'll bring that product forward to you.
So is that motion a request to authorize an extension to the current contract in 2-month increments, or just 1 2-month extension?
Well, I said, 60 days.
60 days.
Right.
Okay.
So that's my proposal. Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a just to get us past this period of time.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah, support. And that's 2 months, right?
Right.
60 days.
60 days.
Right. From August 12th. From August 12th, not from today, from August 12th.
That is from
September,
right.
October,
So
that's
starts
right.
August 13th.
60 days.
60 days.
Right.
Okay. So there's a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just a question.
Yes, John.
So should we write something up, or, I mean, so we're just doing it on a verbal motion?
Yes.
Should we have, I'm not an attorney, so I'm just wondering here, can we just continue, or should we have something in writing?
Well, I think we can do it right here.
Okay. I mean, you're
it'll
more
be-
qualified than I am.
It'll be in writing,
yeah.
but I'll just have to ask one question. Dana, do you consent to a 60-day extension? Yes. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, and I wished it was that easy to have done anything to modify the assessment that we tried to do last year. So, okay, so assuming this motion passes, we will have a 60-day extension. If we reach contract before that, approval, we'll end the old contract, start the new.
Right.
All right.
That would be August 12th?
Starting on the 13th, contract ends
Oh,
midnight of...
August 13th. I'm sorry, October 13th. We're extending it 60 days.
60 days, whatever 60 days is, there's a 31 in
Okay,
there,
so
so...
all right.
Yeah. So, all right, so we need a roll call for that motion of an extension of 60 days.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root?
Yes.
Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And just as a reminder to our other board members that are not in the executive committee, yes, we are meeting at 5 o'clock on Thursday, the executive committee. But again, if you wish to attend, if you wish to provide initial input into it, please either send an email to us or please attend. All right? Thank you. What is next on our agenda? Committee reports. All right, so first up would be the Recipient Rights Advisory Committee. Dr. Hans, there should be...
There was no meeting in July, so I don't have a report for July.
Right, thank you. And I knew that from being on there before. Never on the July 4th week. The next meeting would be the Citizens Advisory Committee.
The minutes from the meeting are part of our board packet, so I just want to highlight who our special guest was. Is Hillary Nesbaum, a clinician and therapist and co-responder with the Oakland County Sheriff. It was very enlightening.
Thank you. Next up would be the next opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone online that wanted to make public comment? Did we ever get that other person, that gentleman, back? Okay. Is there anyone in the building? Hi, Fred, come on up. Public comment, we'll need to get a microphone for him. And again, public comment is limited to business of the business, about the board, the HHS. It's, you're allotted 3 minutes. Thank you.
Fred Cummins, Lance from Oakland County, again. I just wanted to comment briefly on the decision to reduce the public comment to 3 minutes. Was that a board decision or? Okay. And I don't take that personally, but I am concerned that to me it suggests that you really don't care. 3 minutes, going from 3 minutes, 5 minutes to 3 minutes is hardly anything, really. And we aren't overloaded with public comment, so it's not a matter of you don't have the time to do it. So I'm concerned that you don't get enough input from public. And this is one of the places that you can and probably should be encouraged. You are a public body, a nonprofit public body, and it is your role as a board to represent the community in terms of what this body is doing. And it's hard to do that if you don't know what the community thinks. And I think the only place that we hear anything or know anything about what the community thinks, for the most part, is complaints to recipient rights and complaints to customer support. And you don't hear anything here about that either. So I think you need to be looking at how do you find out more about what's actually going on. I know that the Macomb County Board reviews the recipient rights complaints. They're paying real attention to what people are complaining about and how those things are being resolved. That's important. Those are things where people have real problems. But there's a lot of real problems that come to the attention of consumer service. I know that because we send people there because they don't have a formal complaint. And besides that, even if they did, most recipient complaints are decided are not merit. And so recipient rights tends to function more as a damage control operation rather than a response to needs in the community. Customer support's a little different, but there aren't written complaints. It's a little softer than that. So I suggest that you ought to be somehow more open. If I look at the listing of board members on your website, I don't see any email addresses or phone numbers. There's no way of people contacting you individually unless they happen to know you or they come to this meeting. So think seriously about what you're saying when you're saying 3 minutes. Oh, that's all we need. I think you need a whole lot more, not just from individuals, but from the community as a whole. I hope you find a way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is our CEO's report. Dana, you have the floor.
Good evening again. Thank you so much for this board's support over the last 3 years. I'm excited to start a new term. I also wanted to comment in terms of my openness to discussions and feedback. I make a point of putting time on my schedule for any board member who wants to talk about any issues or concerns that they may have. Please take advantage of it because I want an opportunity to correct anything that is a problem. So I'm always open to that. I want to welcome you to, like I do with our teams, to come and talk and discuss any issues or concerns you may have. I love what we do, and today was a perfect example of that in terms of seeing people from the community report on their experiences with OCHN, and not just with OCHN, really looking at outcomes. So I have my report here, and I wanted to highlight our minority mental health event. But they stole the show, of course, because you saw the outcome of that event, and it was amazing. You had to be there to really experience the panel from a faith-based position. We had a panel, and that was amazing, and learned a lot, and really looked at the struggles with Burst on Faith and the differences in faith. So that was amazing. And the room was full. So I have to give kudos to customer service, for, again, really planning an amazing event and having people show up and be engaged in what we're doing and give feedback. And it also partners with the other event we had with the, where is it? Not the Justice Team. They do amazing things. The Call to Solidarity. Again, I keep hearing about feedback, not just from Pastor Jones, but other people who were present in the community, Mr. Cummings as well. It was an amazing event to bring people together. We often hear that we are almost falling over each other with our efforts, and this is really a way to align those various efforts and bring them together. So we talk a lot about holistic care and integrated care, but we're really looking at all of those social determinants of health and how do we assess that early on, so that we can address all of the things that impact people we serve, not just their mental health, which is a huge part of it, but also the social determinants of health that impact their ability to even engage in the services that we provide. So that's important, and I wanted to highlight that and take the time because, again, in my report, I did want to talk about those events. They're critical to what we do, and it is in line with our priorities to really make sure that people have access to care and not just the people we already serve, because I hear that loud and clear. It's the surveys of people that we don't serve, that we need to serve, and we need to be active and visible in the community. And our providers do an amazing job doing that. And I think over the last few years I've been here, I see we're more visible and more engaged with the community, with stakeholders in the community, leaders in the community, even the Board of Commissioners and the county exec. We're called on, and I'm glad we're called on. And so we need to do more. And so doing more does cost perhaps having more resources, and we know our resources are always challenged. Just today, hearing about some of the challenges that are coming forth in our CEO, PIHP, all the letters meeting, and the directors, executive directors across the state. There are going to be challenges because the budget was passed, and some of the things that were sort of a wish list or needed were negotiated in and out, up or down. So we have to pay close attention to that because it does impact our ability to serve more and to educate this community about where to go and what to do when they need help. And then also, I appreciate the feedback in terms of how we can expose or have ourselves out there and available to those comments. So we'll make some of those changes. The other thing I wanted to highlight is the good work that I know we're doing in terms of our access numbers are up in terms of the number of screenings. And we're looking at ways to expand access, not just by a phone call and not just by our quote-unquote access center in Pontiac. We want to be places in the community throughout Oakland County so people know if they go there, if they call, we're available to help them either formally with some kind of referral or informally, just giving them those community resources so they can get the help that they need. The other thing I'm looking at and also proud of is our justice initiatives. That includes the crisis intervention team training that we do. It also includes our co-responders, which Ms. Newman talked about, Hillary Nussbaum. She's recognized by the law enforcement community, so big kudos to her. So those are the kind of things and stories that we don't hear. We hear the stories that inspire hope, but I do want to, in the coming year, give a better report of data and the analytics of our data to make sure we're going in the right direction in terms of outcomes for people. Because I had a meeting yesterday with our CEO, our core provider CEOs, and one of the things we talked about is some of the financials, but also looking at not just service models, but adding the service models on steroids in terms of providing a service, but looking at the outcome for people. So we can say we did all these things, we engaged people, we provided therapy, we provided medication, day programs, and things of that nature, but we want to make sure that the outcomes are being met so that we see improvements in the lives of people we serve. So that's really critical to what we're doing, and we're doing it. It's just an opportunity to expand and do more. Maybe more with less, but to do more. The other thing I wanted to highlight had to do with our crisis services. And often we identify crisis services almost independently of each other. And so we have an opportunity to really look and assess our crisis services on a continuum. So when we do that, we know there's a prevention piece, there's an early intervention piece, there's treatment, and there's recovery. So we want to do that and make sure that any gap we have in our crisis system, we're filling. And one of the ways we're doing that is a partnership we have with Oakland County Exec's Office and the Board of Commissioners to do an integrated urgent care. And so as we meet with their teams, with Honor as well, we will see how we fill in one more gap to help people in our community so that they have an area or place to go before they get to full-blown crisis. So we want to make sure we work together, and not just from the mental health standpoint, but also from the physical standpoint, because we often know if people are getting their mental health needs addressed or their behavioral health needs addressed, sometimes the physical side gets neglected and all those other social things get neglected. And then it can be the reverse. You're paying attention to a physical need, and you're not often looking at the mental health challenges that come with that physical condition. So we want to make sure that we do this integrated piece so we fill in another gap in our service array. So I think that is, I'm making sure there's nothing huge that I need to bring up. Oh, one more thing. We had an opportunity with our SUD provider network to have a movie. It's called We Can All Be Heroes. It was amazing event. The room was full. Again, it was an auditorium in Pontiac. The movie was so inspirational. It was amazing. We want to show it to more and more communities, even to the point of maybe using it in schools in terms of educating individuals, youth, about the dangers of substance use and abuse, but also making sure they can see the pathway to recovery. And I think that was the best part. You saw this young man struggle. He's a boxer from Detroit, and you saw his struggle, but you also saw his pathway to recovery. And you saw his family, and you saw the community impact of his use, and then his fight actually to get on the path of recovery. So those are the kind of events we want to promote, because the more we impact people we serve, we can do that prevention work, but also get them faster on a recovery path than they would have if they not had those resources. So that's all I have, and again, thank you for your support.
Any questions for Dana?
If I could, thank you very much for a great report. And I know you spend a lot of time with the outreach and the effort to reach a wider group of persons that need our services and what have benefit from our services. One of the outcomes of the minority meeting, mental meeting, and I've sat on a panel with some just interesting people, but I had the opportunity to sit next to a representative from the Indian community. And I mentioned, as I spoke, I mentioned about things that Black African-American young men and women go through, and she said, we have the same problem. And so with the hope next year, because mental health has no color, no color, no culture, no ethnicity, it doesn't matter your social, education, or economic status, mental health is everywhere. And that maybe it would be good for our youth panel to bring in some Indian kids and also some Hispanic kids, because they certainly are really struggling. And as I talk with them, I did have a brief meeting with the Chaldean community about where they are and stuff. So it may be, but I think it would give us a better idea of who we need to reach and what's going on in that. And I met a wonderful person here that's on this board, and because I was looking at the Hispanic population, and I threw out a couple of numbers and areas, and she says, yes, you know why. And she worked with Easter seals, and she really enlightened me on some of that. So I think that understanding, and I'll use the word rising and shifting populations, we really need to include them in our minority session. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments for Dana? If not, now we're looking for board comment. Do we want to go through a roll call way to do it tonight? Just as a change.
Mr. Young?
A couple things. It was good to see Kano and the work that they're doing. And I'm going to harken back to one of my first meetings when Malchiah said study sessions are important. So if we're running out of topics, let me throw a few out for the future. Dana knows my favorite one, transportation. There's progress being made, but I think we need to talk about it so we all understand where it's at. Second, Dana, you referenced one that we wrestle with at the university, and that's the integration of, community health, mental health, and the public health system, and how those come together. And then the other piece is we talk about our agencies, but there are self-determined that wrap around. And the one thing that the Medicaid redetermination has brought to light for me is, I'll say it this way, how fragile that moves back and forth. And there is no playbook, it happens. My example, Sunday I get a text from the state, I go to the website's down for 24 hours. You have no clue what that text is, right? So I think we've got to talk about those agencies, ARC and others, how we come together, because people cross our lines, and we can survey and we can do all. I get those surveys too, you know, but that covers 0.1% of what happens. So there's 3. Yeah, I was listening when you told me we need those study sessions. Thank you.
Oh, it's me, sorry. Mr. Furman?
I just want to echo and say thank you to the Ascend Foundation for the Tours that inspire, and also congratulations to Dana on embarking on a new term. Have a good night.
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank our finance team and BDO for all their hard work. There was a lot to go through this year. There's more money in the system because of COVID and other sources of revenue, so there was a lot more to do, and I appreciate their work and effort and everyone on the staff who assisted in that. So thank you.
Mr. Torres?
No comment, thank you.
Pastor Jones?
Thank you. Let me echo the words, one of the great presentation and work of the Ascend Foundation. I just think they're doing a great job in the Pontiac area, and I'll expand that to the Oakland County area. I think they're doing a great job with our young people over the years, starting in 2016, moving forward. So the mental health programs, substance abuse programs, and things, really good. So thank you for that. And then I want to thank our chairman of this board. I tell you, you do a great job. Thank you for weeding us through on the salaries and all of that. I thank you for the time. I thank you for the energy and the wisdom that you went through helping us get through that. So I want to say thank you very, very much for that. Also, I'd like to just throw out an accolade for the staff. We have such a great staff here. The people that reach out, and I know I get on their nerves because I'll call them, you know, but that's what happens when you list your phone number. But they do a great job, and they're always willing to try something different, try to expand it. So thank you very much for this moment to be able to talk about the Ascend Foundation, to talk about the staff, and to certainly talk about you, Mr. Chair, for leading us in the way that you have. Thank you.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
No comment.
Ms. Root?
I just want to say I'm thankful that we had sort of some long discussions tonight. I think it's important that we talk, and that we feel safe to ask questions or have differing opinions, right? That means that we're on the right page, we're on the right track as a board. So yeah, I hope we continue to feel comfortable to do that. And yeah, I'm just grateful. Thank you.
Ms. May?
I had a couple of things. First of all, to add on to a study session, I would really like to hear more about, I know, Dana, you and I had discussed bringing more services to northern and western Oakland County. It's basically a desert. I'm talking to more and more people. We can't even find counselors, even if we have insurance. I am working with Commissioner Hoffman on getting those Save a Life boxes out in our area. We're working really hard to get some people in the community on board with it. But yeah, I'm starting to really worry about my community because we don't seem to be receiving any of the services and supports. I mean, we might have access to MORC and Easter Seals, but we don't have access to any sort of direct care workers because they're not out there. And then another comment I had was, I know that we had discussed how we would receive the comments that were given, like the anonymous comments that were given through the internet or prior to our meetings. But this memorandum doesn't provide the comments, so I'm unable to see even what these people said. It just says an anonymous comment was submitted.
So the comments were provided at the meeting?
Oh, okay,
and these
perfect.
are just responses?
Great, thank you so much.
Okay. But if you were able to be at the meeting, I can provide those comments for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
So. Ms. Woodruff?
I appreciated the presentation tonight from ASCEN, the director's report, and the vote from the board to accept the auditor's report so that we can move forward with a clean slate. And hopefully, the new policies and procedures will, I think that having the monthly FSRs will help greatly with the things that the finance department needs to do to continue to have a clean audit. Thank you.
I also would like to thank the ASCEN Foundation, Mr. Phillips, Lauren, and Brian, and their presentation today. I'd like to also thank everyone in the board for their contributions, the discussions today, in particular the insight provided today. I do appreciate that. And I also want to say, just from a provider outside of the county, I do want to say I appreciate what our CEO is doing, and I thank her for her willingness to accommodate some of the requests. And I hear good things, again, as a provider outside of the community, the county. So I want to thank you and hope that you continue to excel as you are. We all know it's a difficult task. Mental health in general is difficult. We all know that no matter what aspect we're in. And I just hope that things will continue as such, and we'll all continue to improve or work toward improvements, because we know it's not difficult, and just keep that in mind. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the folks that presented tonight, that prepared for these and other things that went on all month long. I'm reminded that on occasion, Dana, you and I talk, and we always talk about access and coverage, geography and demographics. And, and one of the, we always talk about that we're hitting the urbans, we're hitting the suburban, but we're not hitting the rural corners, the geographies out to the north or the west as much as we could. And we have been trying to figure out how to do a better job with that. We have been wondering where we're going with transportation, with what the county is trying to do with SMART and how we can get them to move faster, include us and move faster. And this evening with not only Mr. Phillips, but also with Brian and Lauren here, it made me think, well, there's really a third access point, which is age, the kids. Because maybe they will help some of the demographics that have a fear factor about mental illness. Because maybe they're the ones that will help, because they're too young to carry, the stigmas. So maybe they will understand, or learn to understand what is mental health, what kinds of things do I have, or do I see with others? How can I get help, and how can I be peer support to help others? So I think that was a great lesson I picked up today, that it's not just geography and it's not just demographics, it's also age. And maybe that will help us crack the code. So, something even I learn every week. So, thank you guys for opening my eyes. Thank you all. And with that, the agenda is complete, and so I'll bring us to adjournment.